and condolences to you on this pathetic day.
The February 25th electoral cycle translates into 24 years of uninterrupted electoral cycle, the longest in the history of Nigeria. It came with lots of optimism and expectation. In my own opinion, I would like to say that this election was the most anticipated election in the history of Nigeria. It came with lots of optimism amongst local and international observers that this election would come with more improvements than others.
Hello everyone, my name is Emmanuel and I want to share my thoughts on what I feel about the Nigerian February 25th, 2023 presidential election. It is a critical time for our nation and these are the issues that need our attention. Firstly, most of the contestants in the elections are too old. We have contenders who are 70 and 72 years old respectively.
Hello, good day. My name is Dennis Ezechukwu Godwin. Now, following the outcome of the election, I would say that Nigeria still have a very long way to go in election matters.
To be sincere with ourselves, February 25th every year supposed to be an anniversary for this Nigeria. Every Nigerian knows say na February 25th, 2023, na him our big men for this country carry their lie, deceit and open thief, take so smelly clothes, wear them without shame. They waka for our country reach today.
Today, I'm going to share my thoughts with you about the Nigerian 25th February 2023 presidential election. The former president of Nigeria, General Muhammadu Buhari, and the National INEC chairman promised us Nigerians a good, incredible, transparent, free and fair election, which turned out to be our worst nightmare.
I'll be exploring the three prominent candidates, Mr. Peter Gregory Obidient of the Labour Party, Bola Ahmed Asiwaju Tinubu Batified of the All Progressive Congress, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar Articulated of the People's Democratic Party.
So what's an election? An election is a formal process where people choose individuals to hold public offices or decide on specific issues. And we're not going to be looking at the aspect of deciding on specific issues you're making decision. We're going to be looking at the aspect of choosing individuals to hold public offices. Not talk about election. Eligible citizens, I'm not Nigeria, citizens from 18 years and above are the ones that are eligible to vote. They are representative.
It was an election that was so greatly anticipated by an average Nigerian with so much energy and hope that it's gonna be the only vital avenue for salvaging the situation of the nation.
Our president, they say there is nothing I can do. Oh. So me, there is nothing I can say. I will carry on. If I feel close my see myself for Canada, I can collect more. No. I will come back. This country knows I can do.
Two things were unprecedented about the 2023 general elections. First was the stout political rallies held by Nigerians across Nigeria even before electioneering campaigns kicked off. Second was the use of beavers. Nigerians were given repeated assurances that beavers would not falter, that beavers would work. Unfortunately, all these were rendered completely useless when the electoral body intentionally refused or failed to transmit results online.
This is the first DDM video competition. No glitches.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we are already aware, this is the Diaspora Digital Media Special Nigeria 2023 Presidential Election Anniversary Telethon. It's an opportunity for us to rehash the events of the past 1 year and ask ourselves how markets. If I had opportunity, I would have shared a video of a Nigerian who made a video of himself where he was asking various people's groups, parties, and individuals how markets, how they have fared, how they think they have fared so far after 1 year. Joining us on the program this evening will be Dr. Tanko Yunusa. He was a spokesman of the Labour Party during the 2023 presidential election. And then also joining us will be brother, Professor Mobolaji Aluko. He will also be giving us his 2 pence on how markets. And under this segment, we'll be talking about precisely what, one second, yes. We'll be talking precisely the Obidient movement versus the Emi Lokan and Agbado politics. Nigerians, now that you have tasted both, you are in a position to give the verdict. Our guest speaker, I also invited another guest speaker, but I'm here to observe his presence in the person of Barrister Titie. Barrister Titie, please, if you are in the audience, can you make us know you are present? If not, we'll find a way to reach out to him. In the meantime, Dr. Tanko Yunusa, please, can you unmute yourself and tell us how markets with the Obidient movement versus the Emi Lokan and Agbado politics?
Okay, good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First of all, let me apologize for my background. I'm actually in Kefi. Kefi is in Nasarawa State in north central Nigeria. Interestingly, I also just left Warri. Warri is in Delta State, south of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So just to tell you that even as part of the lesson learned, we are still crisscrossing Nigeria to see how we can make it better. Now, in retrospect, if we are to go back and to what we were before we got to where we are and what the future looked like, we may go back in a little bit of history. During the 2023 campaign, when INEC actually opened its portals for registration of voters, it was evident that the Nigerian youth were interested in what INEC was actually presenting and bringing to the table. A while ago, I was just reading the documents that INEC was defending so vociferously as regard to the process of the election, which was highly documented and highly acceptable by all. I remember with nostalgia when INEC was actually practicing reporting of results to the general public. And as at that time, they used the Vivas machine as a way of reporting results in Edo State and Ondo State. It worked so marvelously well. Results were transmitted as real time. Many people who became reporters at each polling unit, creating all kinds of insinuation as regard to who won election and who lost election at the polling unit were almost like out of market because INEC was reporting the results accordingly, and it all tallied with the expectation of the people. That was like 4 years ago. So with that euphoria, a lot of people were so determined that, okay, INEC might do the right thing under the leadership of Professor Mahmoud Yakub, whom I know very well to be interested in using the instrumentality of the law as a defense for him to establish result of elections. Unfortunately, that did not play out after the election in 2023. But the pointer here is, during that particular registration period, the Nigerian youth came out en masse, irrespective of their religion, tribe, and creed. They came out and registered. According to the record, 12.5 million of them actually registered to vote. But don't forget that at that time too, many of our clans came out in mobilizing towards having an egalitarian and sustainable political party under the leadership of Professor Pat Otomi. The National Consultative Front was the anchor of the political parties that may be used by the Obidient movement. Or, as we will have it, we were not having Peter Obi as our anchor man as at that time. But the moment we announced on the 25th of September 2021 or so, 2022, that we actually have adopted the Labour Party as our ticket, as our vehicle for electioneering, Peter Obi joined and won the primary election on the 30th in Asaba. On that day, a new leadership, a new political spectrum was born, and the Obidient movement moved in gallantly into the Labour Party. But from the lesson learned, we had a tripartite triangle of fate, which I call triangle of fate. We have the Obidient movement on the left of the triangle. We have the Labour Party on the right of the triangle. And then we have the campaign council of the Obidient movement and Labour Party at the top. Our lesson as at that time that was learned was that there needs to be a synergy between these 3 pointers. Unfortunately, we were not quick in establishing that particular fact. So other political parties who are our adversary took advantage of it and went to the market and tried to tout us at that we don't have structure, that is actually just 3 persons on the internet trying to mobilize Nigerians to win election. But behold, that 3 persons that they were talking about become a giant movement that they could not even contend with. Interestingly, where we found ourselves was that we were able to mobilize Nigerian youth, and even the ladies, the younger girls, were more interested in actually having an Obi as the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So the movement galvanized a lot of support and love. You may be interested to note that while we were mobilizing on the social media and trying to galvanize Nigerians, a lot of people also blacklisted us names like Obidient, Biafra, all kinds of names that we are very, very decorous and antagonistic to anybody who is against the Obidient movement. But I actually differ. I differ because the Nigerian youth have been used for a very long time and been weaponized against the sovereignty of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And how do I mean so? Those who are already in position of power actually enhance and empower these youth to manipulate, kill, maim, and insult, intimidate anybody who is trying to give this country a new lease of life and making it look very good. And so the people who are on the positive side decided to really say, okay, enough is enough, and we're going to go against anybody who decide to make life miserable for us. So therefore, during that registration, what happened was that many of these youth were intimidated, were being attacked, stabbed, called all kinds of names, And nobody did anything about it. That was the beginning of the pointer of the revelation of what happened in the election in 2023. I was in Lagos, and I saw how our members were being attacked. Some were being killed. Some were being maimed. Some were being intimidated. Use any negative word that you can use to describe how we were being dehumanized just because we want to vote for Peter Gregory Obi. At the end of it all, they manipulated the system brazenly, unbelievable, with a lot of disdain and disgusting attempts. The question is, how can you have 3 elections on the same day? These elections were Federal House of Representatives, the Senate, and then the presidential election. Using the same server, using the same process of reporting the result. And at the end of it all, you were only able to report the Federal House of Reps, the Senate, and then a glitch, the powerful glitch, God knows where it comes from, happened on that day of the election against only the presidential election. And that was mischievously, meticulously calculated manipulation of the will and vote of the people. So I saw the ingenuity on their manipulative system. But then my question was, that particular act couldn't have happened if somebody was not held responsible. Because somebody is in charge of that particular transmission of results, who is in charge of the technology that was installed. Huge sum of money were being introduced into this particular election, both locally and internationally. Yet one person decided to manipulate the system. You know, before in our electioneering, it is actually the individuals that have been always been bought, maybe like they call the stomach infrastructure. But this time around, we witnessed the bizarre purchase of two, the judiciary, thirdly, the security. So while the institutions were completely being manipulated and being bought over, it becomes so easy for the Lord of the Sky to take over the structure of all elections processes in Nigeria. And that was how the mandate of the Nigerian people was stolen on the 23rd of February 2023. Ladies and gentlemen, my historical background and what we found ourselves is just to remind us of the challenges, of the drawbacks, and the level of insanity that we found ourselves. Going forward, a lot of people will have been saying now, what do we do? Because I've always liked to present a situation where I look in the past, I look at the present situation, and I try to provide a solution as the best way as I can. I have observed with serious, deep scholarly thinking, I observed that the Nigerian situation has been deliberately been made so because of the interest of those who enjoy the power game. And believe me, it is not about tribe or religion or where you come from. It's about power. When they want to get power, they don't think about religion. They can use it as a weapon to get to where they want to get to. But once they get that particular power, go and see them in the middle of the night when they share the loot. They don't really care where you come from. As long as they can share the loot and steal the mandate of the people and our collective resources. So for me, what I would advise strongly that we should do as a people, number one, we must advocate strongly too. I've seen a lot of issues on protests about hunger and the rest of them. I agree perfectly well. But what solution? We can only do a protest for 2 or 3 days, and then they come up with their misgiving palliative, and then the Nigerian people will keep quiet, and then it is roller coaster, and they continue. We must demand. This will be a very strong debate, a movement. We must demand for a constitutional reform. The constitutional reform should be vis-a-vis the Electoral Act. I say this with a lot of patriotism. Because Justice Mohammed Uwais' report, including, interestingly, Festus Okoye happened to be part of that particular Justice Uwais committee on electoral reform. But unfortunately, when he got into that particular INEC commission, he was doing otherwise. Well, he who pays the pipers, they say, dictate the tones. We must demand for a constitutional review vis-a-vis the Electoral Act. The process in which the INEC and Independent Electoral Commission is institutionalized must be revisited. Must be revisited. For those of them who think that when they are in the National Assembly, that they can do this, they can take care of the law to suit them, just like the way they tackled or they manipulate the process of election, having the presidential election and the Federal House of Representatives and Senate election coming first, then taking it down to the local government and then the governorship election, which is supposed to be the other way around. We must think fast that they will be out of that particular place if they don't put the right laws in place so that they can benefit from it in the future. This is a warning. So therefore, they must institutionalize a new electoral act that would take care of the recruitment process of INEC itself. INEC chairman cannot be under the whims and caprices of the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, because he is the one that appoints and he can decide to actually, relieve him or sack him of that particular position, even though some will say it is not possible. But with the kind of disdain and violent way in which these particular governments act, they can do and undo and put the Constitution in abeyance using the instrumentality of the law. We have already seen it happening. So therefore, we must demand that the Electoral Act and the Constitution must follow Justice Mohammed Uwais' report, which says that INEC itself must be balkanized into three commissions. One, the Enforcement Commission. Two, the Electoral Commission. Thirdly, the Delineation Commission. If you use this as a focal point of protest, we may be able to get closer into solving most of our problems. And the Electoral Act itself must also be made in such a way that it does not give room for any form of lacuna that can be manipulated by our judiciary, so that elections should be done and dusted at the polling unit, not creating job for the boys, where the legal angle will not benefit so humongously. And then at the end of it all, giving power to those who do not deserve it. This is an angle that we need to really, really face as collective as possible. Yes, some are also saying that we should look at the issue of parliamentary system of government against federal system of government. Well, for me, both can play out if they are being effectively being put into place. Yes, I agree there will be a check on balances when you use the parliamentary system of government and the rest of them. But when or how do we make this particular process happen? Changing it from a deep root to a reality that we are hoping. Maybe in the no distant time, if the debate starts, and I know a lot of people will shoot it down before we go to the state and then agreeing on that position. Then thirdly, there must be a serious advocacy to the electorate about our divide. People should know that election and selecting the person that will lead us does not necessarily have to be.
Everybody, first, I want to thank Daniel Elumba for inviting me to this, I guess it's a summit or a dialogue. Yeah. I have known Daniel for quite a while. I don't think I've ever met him, but we are long-term internet chatters, let's put it that way. And all through the election process, I knew him to be on the other side of the divide. And I was firmly on the APC divide. I am currently a commissioner for infrastructure and public utility in the APC government of Ekiti State. I have known the President Bola Tinubu as a pro-democrat since 1993, 1994. I am a strong supporter of his presidency. I've also known Alhaji Atiku since he was actually an ACN or presidential candidate. If there was anybody, any politician I've taken money from just once in my life, it was Alhaji Atiku. I also know Peter Obi when he was governor of Anambra State. I was abroad then, and I had a friend who we had some commercial engagement with him when he was governor. I state all of this to put my presence here in context, that in general, even the title of this piece, the Obidient movement and Emi Lokan /Agbado politics, indicates that I'm in fairly hostile territory. But I'm ready for that. I think I was hearing Emmanuel Ogebe speak earlier. Again, Ogebe is a longtime friend. Just this past Sunday, I was in Asaba with several other commissioners for water in the country, trying to come up with how best to improve the water situation in the country. Tomorrow I will be in Abuja. I'm speaking from my room in Ado-Ekiti. Tomorrow I will be in Abuja with 35 other power and electricity commissioners on Tuesday and Wednesday, discussing on how the electricity situation in country will improve, especially in light of the Electricity Act, in light of the Electricity Amendment signed by Buhari and the Electricity Act signed by President Tinubu. We will be discussing for 2 days how the states will ensure that things go well. I'm saying this because a year after the elections, while some people are still, yes, unhappy about the outcome, still wishing that their candidate would have been president, the country is moving on. The country has to move on, despite all the challenges that we have. Foreign exchange challenges, food challenges, electricity challenges. The country will have to contend with the challenges that it faces based on an outcome of an election, contested or not, of February 25, 2023. There are people, and when I talk about commissioners of water, they are all from all the political parties. There are those from Abia State, that's LP, those from other states that are PDP and APC. In the 36, it comes from all political parties. So a mature way to look at governance is after an election has been held, after court processes have been done, after the Supreme Court has ruled, we must move on so that those who wish their candidate to continue to be relevant may either return to their states and see how they can improve the lot of those states, or be good, loyal opposition, encouraging the present government to do what is right and stating what they believe should be done when they are wrong. That is mature governance. Let me now go actually to the election itself. I'm sure many of you know that I write a lot about Nigerian politics. I've been writing about Nigeria since my time in the United States for almost 2-3 decades, before I came to Nigeria in 2011 to Bayelsa State as a pioneer VC, and now in government in Ekiti State. I was a diaspora who criticized about things in Nigeria, and I felt when there was an opportunity to come and serve, I have come and served, and I'm staying to contribute my lot to the improvement of the country. Let's go to the election itself. those who read me knew that I indicated that there was no way Peter Obi and Atiku would win that election when they had divided themselves between PDP and Labour Party. There was a chance for them to win in either way. In fact, if you add the votes of Atiku and the votes of Obi, they are over that of Tinubu in the presidential election. Divided the sphere. That is an axiom, a maxim, that divided they fell. And that was first an outcome. The second outcome was that there was an inflated expectation of an outcome based on what I would call rigged opinion polls. There was such a high expectation from opinion polls that were laughable. Nigeria and Nigerians are so divided among ethnicity, economic wherewithal, religion, gender, that it's almost impossible to devise a statistical means of getting the views of Nigerians from whether it is a phone poll or a documented poll, for you to be able to know what Nigerians will do on election day. And yet we were inundated by polls. Peter, at Edo Peter site, this, that. So Peter Obi is 34%, 43%, 80%. Laughable. So there was an inflated expectation of winning, so that when he did not win, there was also a big depression about loss. There was no way he could have won based on those polls. The third issue had to do with BVAS. BVAS, IREV. And I will end a little bit there on BVAS and IREV. Leading up to the election, first I would blame Professor Mahmood for also giving an inflated view of the impact of what BVAS would be or the IREV will be relative to this process. Okay, he gave an inflated view of the actual impact of BVAS, of IREV, relative to the process. IREV was an assurance mechanism. It was not a certifying mechanism. The fact that IREV worked or not had nothing to do with the real results. They could have been rigged, they could have been correct, but IREV itself had nothing to do. It was just a mechanism to let those who are watching to see what was going on. It did not change the results on the field. If the results were rigged, IREV did not change it. If they were not rigged, IREV did not change it. And the fact, and I will tell you that leading up to that election, there were lots of, what will I say, probably childish assertions that they were going to ensure that nothing would happen to IREV, that we're going to somehow get into the INEC records. I mean, I read it. People who were saying that they were internet gurus, computer gurus. They will get into INEC's machine. I will not doubt it if, in fact, the glitch by INEC was a deliberate glitch to prevent such an occurrence. I would not doubt it. Nobody has said so, but I would not doubt it. Finally, the issue of the Supreme Court. A Supreme Court or any court only rules based on what is before it. In 2007, I took part in Governor Ifeanyi of Ekiti's campaign to reclaim his mandate over Oni in Ekiti State. For 3 years, he tried to do that. And what the court insisted upon, forget about all the peripherals, certificates, this, that. What you have to show is that the numbers, the figures provided by INEC are not the figures provided by INEC from another credible source of INEC. Period. You have to use INEC's figures to disprove INEC. You cannot use your own figures, or you cannot ask the court to go to the market to look for new figures. The only way to turn, according to the elections, after you have disposed of pre-election issues, the only way judges will counsel an election after it has disposed of pre-election issues is to use INEC's figures to disqualify INEC's figures. And none of the petitioners was able to do that. None. There was not Obi, not Atiku could give, there were, I don't remember, 176,000 polling units. I did not see any figures or enough figures to disqualify what INEC had presented. So the petition was dead on arrival, even to a non-lawyer like myself, not to talk of Emmanuel Ogebe and other people. My final question has to do with the fact
we do not have
yeah, just the final issue has to do with how we go forward. I believe that our elections will be credible when we remove human intervention. We must go to full digital voting, where from the point where you press the name of your candidate, it goes straight somewhere, and not I vote in my polling unit, somebody writes something down, takes it to the ward unit, somebody takes it from the ward unit, goes to the local government, somebody takes it from local government, goes to the state. We must remove the human element to the greatest amount possible from that of, from the electoral process. And I agree with Dr. Yunusa that we must unbundle INEC. INEC is doing too much. INEC cannot register parties and then conduct the election and then prosecute, sanction people and so on. No, we should not. And I think too, at some point that we may actually try to see whether the states can just run these elections themselves, and but under very strong scrutiny. Let me yield at that point. And again, I want to thank the Lumber or the Lumber family. I know there's Tim and there is Daniel. There may be other Lumbers floating somewhere. I want to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir, for your input. We really appreciate that. I hope you will still be around. If in case any of our audience, any member of the audience will have a question for you, so that you make some more clarifications. But before we do that, let's yield place for our two of our guests. Let's hear out their 2 pence. Then from there, we now go to our audience. Please, Mr. Frank Titie, can you unmute yourself and give us your 2 pence? on the issue of obedience versus Emi Lokan.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, team, for this opportunity. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Go on.
All right. Thank you so much. I listened keenly to Dr. Yunusa on YouTube before I switched to Zoom. He is as usually as spirited as possible that he can always be. I thank him for the balance that he usually brings to the conversation, not necessarily because of the official role he had in the Labour Party in the build-up to the election, but the standpoint he holds are quite nationalistic and patriotic. So this gives me opportunity to directly commend him. I also will not forget that Professor Aluko has been quite active, more than active for his age. It's difficult to find any young person that can actually compete with him when it comes to engagement.
I'm 68 years old. 68
Indeed.
years old.
Indeed.
68. 69 next month.
I know that, Prof. I know that, Prof. I'm commending you because this is the second time I'm seeing you actively engaging when people of your mates and people who even have greater responsibilities in government take it as an opportunity to always run away from engagement with young people, but you're always available. The last time I hosted a meeting on the state of Nigerian universities where I copiously referred to your time as Vice Chancellor in Niger Delta University was quite engaging. That was when your friend in California, Tony Daudu, actually invited and organized that meeting. So thank you, Prof, for all of this. Dr. Yunusa and Professor Aluko have made very fine points, but I'd like to speak to briefly to the topic we were discussing. Well, Obidient, Emi Lokan, and Agbado. I think what's important is we need to tone down the vitriolic rhetoric about our politics. I like when Professor Aluko steps up his intellectual standpoint and then he engages. And on that basis, he's unafraid to engage any matter. I think the acerbic nature of our politics is destructive to the idea of nation building. The contestation for power has become something that is akin to literal war, and we become permanently divided. In addition to the divisions that have torn us to the point of torn us apart, even to the point of civil war. So our politics presently, in the emergence of the obedient movement and the self-entitlement mentality of Emi Lokan, together with the principle of an Agbado politics, even in the current midst of hunger that is inexplicable, because I believe that our country does not have any reason to be hungry. So the team had said, well, we refer to it aptly as my 2 cents. In this regard, considering that as a practicing lawyer and then mainstream news analyst on Arise News, the goal has been objectivity, lack of not taking sides. But I owe myself and those who I am privileged to be listening to me the duty for truth, the duty to truth. We are missing the big point, as I conclude. We're missing the big point of nationhood. We are so disunited. And I cite the example because I lived through vividly and with so much strong, vivid memory of 1984, when General Buhari and Tunde Idiagbon took over power. I recall the days of General Babangida, General Abacha. I recall the emergence of the new democracy we practice very strongly as a lawyer under Olusegun Obasanjo. What we have seen so far is that there's a degeneracy in the current politics we're playing. And we must learn. I'm watching the American politics going on in the build-up to the November elections. I'm seeing the banters being thrown between Trump and Nikki Haley, and then even as the fight between the dirty politics between the Democrats and the Republicans in trying to bring down Donald Trump. Donald Trump believes that American politics has degenerated, has descended to that of the third world, of third world countries like Nigeria, where opposition is obliterated. That is an indication of the fall of the great United States. Professor Aluko can attest to that, having been someone who went to school in the US. I close by saying that we cannot continue to live as if the end of our existence as peoples, and then ultimately as a country building towards nationhood, we cannot conclude that the end is tussle, power for power, struggle for power at all costs. We cannot afford that. If we do, we will be a country that is only united when it is playing football, or either in AFCON or the World Cup. We must begin to try to create certain convergence where all of us can agree, especially in the determination, in the definition of our Nigerianness, in order for us to be able to have some peculiar, ethics. I would refer to as ethos, national ethos, that will bind us together first. And then we have a set of standards by which we can judge all of us so that we can clearly know when the INEC chairman is deviating, when the president is deviating, when presidential aspirants in their contestations for power are actually becoming enemies of progress, all in the name of grabbing power. I think we have a major challenge in nation building. I will rest at this point in the hope that we will have Dr. Yunusa and Professor Aluko coming to address the various various issues that we have this opportunity to raise at this time. Thank you very much, team, and the organizers of this Diaspora digital engagement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Frank. We really appreciate that. And well, I want to apologize to my audience if you're having a crackling noise at my background. My neighbor just turned down generator. The generator nation will be kind to please bear with us as it is. Meanwhile, okay. I'm still waiting to hear from our audience. Okay. Before we call on Mr. Ifeanyi Nrialike, there is a little quick movement going on at the background, so we will wait a little before we have a decision on that. So for now, please, we want the members of the audience, if you have a new question for our three of our guests that have spoken so far on this, can you indicate by raising your hand? We already have some hands in the air. We have Mr. HTM Okoye. Please tell us who you are directing your question to so that the person will respond.
Yeah, my question.
Mr. Okoye, you have our ears.
Yeah, thank you. My question goes to the Professor Aluko. And the question goes like this. I heard him say, talk so much about his belief in President Asiwaju with regards to him being a Democrat and all that. So my question is, at what point does this belief start to wane? Because we know the nature of belief. Being a professor, that you believe something doesn't necessarily mean that you know that thing very, very well. And, in terms of leadership, does he think that that belief also will hold, irrespective of the sort of, the health of that person that he believed in, irrespective of his well-being and his articulation and whether that person is going, say now, at what point does this belief hold, or does he hold at all time? Whenever he comes out, he must believe in him. At what point does this belief hold? Thank you, Professor.
I smile. If I should I respond?
Go on, please. Go on.
Yeah, I smile at Mazi Okoye's question because immediately after President Tinubu was elected, all his senility and his wet pad and his stuttering and all that and his imminent death, all of it seemed to have disappeared to a lot of extent after his election. Again, I tell you, I've known him since 1994, 1993, 1994. And when he writes, his right hand has always been unsteady, you know, okay? So since that time, but he is right upstairs. Now, my belief in him, let me get it very clear, okay? He's just a few years older than myself, and we're in pro-democracy. I was not from the state. My belief in him is not funny. It's not as if he is my leader. It has nothing close to my understanding of Awo's leadership, okay? But I know that of all the presidents that have won election in this country, he is the best prepared. Most of the others have been accidental presidents, either because they did an election or, I mean, they did a coup, became president, or a military government was living and installed them, or somebody who was installed died and they succeeded. If you look at every single president that we've had, it has been an accidental issue. And here's a person who has been for a long time trying to be governor until he said, Emi Lokan. That Emi Lokan is an entitlement statement in Yoruba, but it's also an issue that I am prepared. Every one of us prays that the next big opportunity, Iwo Lokan, Mazi Okoye, you have prayed at some point, looking at a particular position coming, that may it be God's pleasure to put you in that position because you think you are able to succeed in it. My only hope and prayer is that the policies he has put in place, along with other people, will be given some chance to succeed, and that he will be flexible enough to change those policies when he sees that they are not working the way they are. That is robust leadership, okay? I was in the United States in the first year or two when Obama was president. And the Republicans did not give him a chance. Some of the policies he did, he gave money to the big business. He said there were some that were too big to fail. There was a lot of accusation against him. He did not, what he did not start to yield any success until almost 2 years. And within a short time, those people we gave money to paid back, and they started to see things pick up. Even he barely did not succeed in winning his election 4 years later, but he is now ranked the 7th best president in the whole of America, after the big president, before Clinton, before Reagan. That is how history judges people. So 1 year into Tinubu's presidency, yeah, things are tough. For many of us who are on this program, we are all the elite. We may be saying, below power, we are hungry. None of us is that hungry. The real hungry people know who they're hungry. We just need to be a little bit patient, especially the sub-nationalities. We should hold our state governors accountable, hold our local government chairmen accountable. Some of the money that is being ferreted to them should be used well at those levels, and we will see that things will improve. Thank you, Bazi.
All right. We have another hand, Dr. Anongo Moses. Please, can you ask your question and tell us you are directing your question?
I am here. I am here.
You will respond accordingly also. So,
okay.
You are a co-host. Wait first. We want to talk to our visitors.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, my question is to Prof. I so much cherish his analysis, but I have issues with few areas he touched, especially the area of the judiciary. When he praised the Supreme Court for doing the job which they were supposed to do. Now, my question is, by the time the Supreme Court took up this matter, the matter was at the Presidential Tribunal. It was after that it was moved to the Supreme Court. And if actually Prof was following the proceedings in the court, the issue was not only about the actual votes that were counted during the election. The issues were actually about qualification criteria. And one of the issues was the issue of Mr. Tinubu giving conflicting information in his academic credentials, which were proven beyond reasonable doubt. Prof, are you saying that issue too did not constitute, how do you call it in law, when you lie on oath? Don't you think those issues were not qualified to discredit Mr. Tinubu? That's question number one. Two, you actually talking about the capacity, the preparedness of Mr. Tinubu to handle the affairs of Nigeria. I am sure you equally understood before now that Mr. Tinubu was a man who stood firmly behind General Muhammadu Buhari to win his election. And he was in that government, whatsoever advice that government needed to better the lives of Nigerians, he was there with the president. But that government happened to be the worst government in the history of Nigeria so far. I would have said these few days of Tinubu are the worst, but since that government has ended, let me not conclude because I don't know when the government of Tinubu will end and how the condition will be tomorrow. Don't you think that the same condition we faced under Buhari when Tinubu was his core supporter is the same thing that is playing today? These are just the two questions I want clarification from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I didn't get your name, but I think we put too much power. I think we put too much power on Tinubu to say he was solely behind Buhari. Buhari was elected twice by millions of votes. How could we put all the blame of Buhari's activities on Tinubu, who was a single citizen like you and I? We put too much power on Tinubu to say he was solely. Yeah, he may have been very supportive of him. I too was supportive of him. I was disappointed by some of the things that occurred, but to solely blame him is wrong. In any case, despite all of that, people made a judgment that despite some people thinking he was the one who caused Buhari's issue, despite the fact that Buhari was APC, despite all of that, they went to vote and he got the maximum number of votes. You and I may dispute that, but the basis of democratic electoral democracy is that people make a judgment of all that have happened about the party, about a particular person, and they weigh based on certain issues. You know, it's not an election is not a one-issue election. You look at the person, the programs, the policies, his past, all of those things. You put weight on all of them. You compare with the next candidate. Then you go and put your vote for that one person. So this is not a papacy. We're not voting among perfect people. We are voting among imperfect people, and we must understand that. Final point has to do with the Supreme Court. I don't want to relitigate. I'm not a judge. I'm not a lawyer. Okay, I don't want to relitigate the Supreme Court issues. But the Supreme Court had certain evidence before it. The judges had certain evidence before, and they came to some conclusion. You and I are not on the bench. Whether it was because they were paid, or whether it was because they looked at their legal understanding, they came to a decision. It is for us as mature citizens to accept the decision of the Supreme Court. I may not agree with it. Even in the United States, the president will come out and say, I don't agree with it. Then he will make a judgment. If it is something that he can legislate so that the next time the Supreme Court does not have that same power, fine. So what I'm getting at is that every one of us, to look at what the Supreme Court agreed to or made a judgment about. If there are certain things so clear that we think they should not have made that decision, let us go to our legislators and ensure that that decision is not made, it cannot be made by a Supreme Court. But until that occurs, it is part of democratic maturity to accept the rulings of a Supreme Court until laws are made that tie their hands. Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate your input. And before we take any other question, please, we want to hear from our guests, Barrister Ifeanyi, so that we'll be rounding up this segment and give room for the next. Our time is already well spent. So, Barrister Ifeanyi, please, kindly speak up. I can't see your phone. I find it.
I think we can barely hear anyone. Okay. Starting, I think we just have to.
Okay. It's for any reason he left. Before he comes back to let us take maybe one more question from Mr. Femi and Aluko. Did you just drop your hand? One last
yes,
question.
I think just dropped his hand. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Femi Alaro, your question addressed.
Okay. You want me to go ahead or?
So if you have a but if
I have a question for a quick question and comment for Professor Aluko. So, sir, I want to commend you for being here. And like you said, I'll say it in Yoruba, Oni and Abalabani Baba. You said, based on his experience, is the most qualified that has been elected president. And I'm glad he has people like you, which is the positive side of the situation we are now in Nigeria. I'm glad you're playing a role because change can only be made from the inside. And I commend you for that. And that being said, my question is, will the parasites, unlike you, that might be in his administration, be the evil that will stop him from achieving his intentions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your question. I will also respond to you by quoting the Yoruba adage that says, ẹni tó bá béèrè ẹni tó pa bàbá ẹ̀, ọwọ́ ẹ̀ gbọ́dọ̀ ti kan idà. Meaning the person who asks for his fathers, who asks who the murderer of his father is, had better have his hand on the hilt of the murder weapon. This is one of the biggest plights of President Tinubu and his cohorts. For example, the dollar-naira variation that we've been seeing is abnormal. There is manipulation behind it that is abnormal. And he has to have a strong handle on our currency and on our banks. Our banks are the culprit behind the situation that we are in. And unfortunately, the very regulator of our bank, the CBN, during the Buhari administration, went to town to turn this country into a bazaar. Turn this country into a forex bazaar. And that's what we're getting now. And what's happening is that it is spiraling. And the government, the Tinubu government must have a strong shock and awe attempt at controlling movements in the bank. Whether it is excess dollars in their vaults, whether it is the Bureau de Change, whether it is the traders at the motor parks and hotels asking you whether you need $1, all of those. There must be, first, a strong arm tactic on controlling our forex. In addition, of course, to clear discipline among his own staff, his own officials, about discipline, about lack of foreign travel, use of need for dollars. In addition to ensuring that we can produce petrol, diesel, and PMS locally rather than importing, reducing importation of food, all of those. He must take those stands. But in addressing the banks, we know that these are powerful people who have used their money to buy the loyalty even of churches. Many of these people who have stolen money give money to Redeemed Church, to Anglican Church, to Catholic Church, to the mosques, who pray for them. So these are powerful people That's number one. Number two is that immediately he starts to arrest certain people. Yoruba will start to count the number of Yoruba he has arrested. Igbo will say, Mbano. The Northerners will say, oh, we voted Muslim. Now he's attacking us. So all those primordial issues about people who have been bought off with money, powerful people, ethnic issues, religious issues, he has to be prepared to solve those. So now, of course, I will tell you that he too has friends, all kinds of friends. Okay? He's not a saint himself. He did not get to where he is without having friends among these people. So he has to make a judgment as to whether he is prepared to lose a lot of his friends, and he must for the sake of the country. Let me stop there for now.
Thank you, sir.
On this note, I say thank you very much, Professor Mobolaji Aluko. I also thank Barrister Frank Titie and my first guest, Dr. Tanko Yunusa, who have made my presentation quite lively and interesting. It seems one or two persons have questioned, but unfortunately my time is spent. We hope that another opportunity will fall when we have another lively discussion, and we will have opportunity to please hear your views. In the meantime, may I remind us that Diaspora Digital Media is interested in what is happening in Nigeria and in the diaspora. That means that if you are in the diaspora, you want to know how you are surviving.
It came with lots of optimism and expectation.
What you are doing and how you see the Nigerian thing from a diaspora prism, so that we can harness your thoughts in form of a video, even in form of an interview, so that we can air your view when opportunity.
Hello everyone, my name is Emmanuel and I want to share my thoughts on what I feel about the Nigerian February 25th, 2023 presidential election. It is a critical time for our nation and